Joining us now, she's been the head coach. I believe she's entering her 16th season. Is that right? It can't be.
It is
Wow.
scary, crazy, right?
What's scary is I started covering softball. That was my first year. It was your first year in Kentucky. And for
Ah,
folks,
cool.
and for the record, I'm speaking with our good friend, head coach Rachel Lawson, who has been one of our most demanded coaches, popular coaches that people have requested having on. So here she is. She's on as once again. She's been on now, I think 4 or 5 seasons in a row. But Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Doing good. Yeah, you and I have linked because my first year in softball was your
Okay.
first season at Kentucky, and like, when I said that? I mean, I just said it. And I was kind of like stunned because I mean, it just feels like has it blown by fast? I mean, what's it like? 16 seasons now entering for you at Kentucky.
Oh, it's so fast. I'm always trying to build and reinvent myself as a coach. So I think that it keeps things moving. I can't believe it was 16 years ago. So it's pretty awesome. I will tell you, I'm a completely different coach than I was 16 years ago. So in that way, it seems like a long time ago. But in terms of time, I don't know if it's good that time has blown by me. I'm getting older. So I got to slow this thing down, I think, a little bit.
All right, if you'd figure that out, let me know.
Okay.
You said how are you different today than you were when you first started and took over the program?
Well, I mean, if you've ever coached in a league similar to the SEC, you know that what you think you know going in is definitely not what happens you figure out very quickly that you're like, wow, I was doing this all wrong. And I think when I first got in the league, I was so focused on now don't get me wrong, organization I think is a great thing and knowing what your skill set, what you like your players to do is always a good thing. But I was so heavy coaching just the skill part of it and the teaching part of it, which I think is awesome. But I wasn't doing a very good job of teaching the game or the game within the game. I didn't spend enough of my practice time on that. And I distinctly remember playing, it was LSU and Yvette Gerard. And at that time, the SEC played midweek double headers along with the weekends. And that was just absolutely brutal. And I think we had probably lost like 3 series in a row. I mean, I was just getting my head beat in from everywhere. And I remember sitting on my little bucket and I'm calling a pitch. And I just said to Coach Himes, I was like, I am getting my butt kicked here. And she's like, yeah, wait till we get new recruits and all that. And I go, yeah, I get that. Recruiting's the lifeline. But no, me, Rachel Lawson, I'm getting my butt kicked here. And so it was just a distinct moment that I just didn't know what I was doing, that I had prepared the team improperly. And so after that, we just kind of, shifted around time and our priorities and stuff. And, now 15 years later, we're getting ready to start another season.
Well, and I think one of the players that obviously I would imagine is up there as far as Mount Rushmore, as far as Kentucky softball, and really was Kelsey Nunley, who just got inducted
Oh,
into
yeah.
the Kentucky Athletics Hall of Fame this past fall, I believe.
Hmm.
What was that like for you to see her get inducted to the Hall of Fame and her impact to your program? Because obviously, I always think of her when I think of Kentucky softball. That was like the rise, when you took the program. Oh, they took that next step. What did it mean to you see her get it honored like she did?
It was incredible. And not only was Kelsey just such an incredible competitor, but she is an awesome person. Like when you do team activities, she's the first one to be engaged. I mean, if you have a Halloween party, she's bringing everybody their own personalized gift to it, or Christmas, or whatever the case is. Just she great team player, great person. And really, even though she was competitive and was all about winning herself, she would fall on the sword. She would die for a teammate. And I think when you have a player that's like that, that is the leader in the circle, you really have something special. And sure enough, she was, SEC Pitcher of the Year and inducted into her Hall of Fame. I mean, just quality all the way around. So I was really happy to see her, and she was so appreciative and thankful. She never assumes anything, and is very, she's an incredibly humble person. I mean, she's back in the country right now. Just I don't even know what she's doing in addition to coaching, but she's just really a neat person, and I just feel really lucky to have coached her.
What does it mean now when it's kind of frequently now you're seeing players you coached getting into the school's Hall of Fame. I mean, it's gotta be special. I mean, Kentucky is such a great athletic school. Like,
Mhm.
it's not easy to get in. I don't know if people realize that. I mean, because there's so many great athletes from so many different great sports, but you're starting to get frequently here softball players getting inducted at Kentucky.
Yeah, it's not easy at all for a couple of reasons. First, I think our school for sure, and I do think this is happening at other places. Our Hall of Fame induction started with our current AD, Mitch Barnhart. So it hasn't. It might be have been going on like 20 years or something like that. But you have 100 years of athletics to catch up on, and you can't induct everybody all at the same time. So really, really difficult to get in right now, especially on the first ballot and stuff, because you have so many past athletes that we're trying to catch up on. And means a lot for softball for two reasons. Number one, if we weren't on TV all the time and we didn't have the Big Blue Nation, we wouldn't be able to recruit the way that we're recruiting. So it really says a lot about the commitment to the sport of softball from everybody all the way around. That makes us more popular because we certainly had athletes who were great softball players before, but it was like nobody knew about them. They were athletes in a vacuum. Now, what you're seeing is you're seeing the sport of softball get popular. And with that, now we're able to just highlight the unbelievable athletes that we have. So, yes, we have unreal athletes, but also now softball has the support and the fan base to recognize them and keep them in the forefront of everyone's mind.
When you look back at last year, you won 37 games, got to a regional final in Blacksburg. You were sent out there against a really good Virginia Tech team. When you think of last season, with this past off season, what comes to your mind?
So many different emotions from last season. Because I'll tell you, at this time last year in January, I had no idea who was even going to pitch for us. And um, it was one of those things that everybody's like, yeah, we'll have a strong bullpen and everything. I'm like, yeah, I have a strong bullpen, but I don't even know who our starter is going to be. Like, and it was crazy. And so we knew that our team had to be good enough to give our pitchers time to settle in. We didn't have a single pitcher who had SEC experience under their belt, very minimal. And so if you would have told me at the beginning of the year we would be at regional finals in the championship, if necessary, game against Virginia Tech, I would have taken it. Because at the time, I didn't think that would, you don't know if that's going to happen. So I was really proud of our team for making it that far. But once you're in the middle of it, you're like, oh, that's a bummer. You always want to advance. And now, fast forward, we do have outstanding pitching. We have several options as starters. So now when we don't know who the first, starter is going to be, is not because we don't know who that human is, but we have a couple of options. So that makes us stronger already. And we're just hoping to build on last season. If we can have the players protect Kowalik and Koffel the way that, and if they produce the way that they have been, I think we have an opportunity to be special this year.
Right, you were so young, especially you mentioned the circle. You
Mhm.
can't. I mean, no matter what you do, practice and things, you can't teach experience. What?
No.
So tell us a little bit about the pitching staff and how you've seen the difference this fall from them as you get set for the season and what you expect from your pitching staff.
Well, young pitchers just pitch. They get up there and they're like, "Oh, I'm just going to throw my cute little rise ball and see what happens." I got a great rise ball. Let's see what happens. And then they see the first big time hitter take. And they're like, "What?" Usually people swing at that thing and then they throw it, in the chalk on the other thing and they're like, "Wait, that's a strike." You know what I mean? Why are you calling that a ball or whatever? So just figuring out how to pitch against elite level hitters is the first thing. And I think that is really challenging. And as much as you tell them in the bullpens and at practice and whatever, and when they're scrimmaging against their own teammates, they really don't figure that out until they face it in a real game that counts on, scoreboards on, TV's watching, like everything's going on. So first they struggle and then oh, I suck, blah, 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 blah. And then, you got to pick their confidence up a little bit and explain to them, it's like, no, you just need to up level your mindset, your game, all that sort of stuff. And once you do that, you'll start seeing those great pitches that you had that you've been working on will now start working, but you've got to know what you want to do with them. You can't just throw them. And so that is the struggle that I think most young pitchers go through. And that was certainly the struggle with almost 100% of mine last year. So once they figured it out, we finished pretty strong, had one of, top half of the SEC, was able to make a decent run in the postseason, all that sort of stuff. And this year because they know that, they're starting a little bit better.
Well, and you were in the mix to host.
Mhm.
If maybe perhaps a couple different results at the end of the season, maybe you get the one of those slots to host. I mean, that's got to be. Is that something you talk to your players about, the returners? That hey, could this is some of the goals we could do considering with the experience you got coming back.
Yeah, you have to talk about it all the time because I think the games that really get you are when you lose a midweek or when you lose a game in a tournament that, if the team's RPI is over 100 or something like that. Those are the games that come back and bite you. It's not the SEC game when you're playing Florida and, they win 2 out of 3 or whatever, whatever the case is. I mean, you don't like that, but the ones that really get you are the other ones. And so you play so many games in softball, and I think the tendency coming out when you're a younger player is that not every game has the same weight or doesn't matter as much. And to be able to explain that to them, so I'm like, no, this Wednesday game against a local opponent is as important as when you're playing on ESPN2 when you're playing Oklahoma or whatever. And that's there's a learning curve associated with that. And fortunately, we have great leadership in our team because they listen to the other players more than they listen to the coaches when it comes to stuff like that. So if that's already part of your culture, a lot easier. It's really hard when you're a new coach and winning is not part of your culture and you have to build them up because you're the one explaining everything to them. When you'll have older people who have been there, done that before, it happens a lot faster.
Offensively, you mentioned Aaron Koffel and Kayla Kowalik. I mean, let's first start with Aaron, who had 423, 20 homers, 68 RBIs. And we don't even talk about what she does defensively. Just speak to her growth and development that you've seen from her.
Oh, Erin is cool. She is one of those athletes that she works all the time. I mean, all the time. Off season, she's constantly trying to improve individual skills. Like her pitch recognition now, as opposed to when she came in college, it's not even close to the same. I mean, she used to get herself out all the time when she was younger. Now, she's really a lot better at she doesn't fish for pitcher strikes. She really makes the pitchers come to the zone or she takes her walks or whatever. And because of that, she barrels up on more balls, has more RBIs, more hits, average went up, all that kind of good stuff. So she's really able to make hard contact. And then in the cages, she just does an exceptional job working in all the quadrants. So she doesn't, she used to have holes in her swing and she doesn't have near as many holes in her swing. And she's just really a tough out. So offense is what I would say. She used to just love offense and was like a good shortstop. Now I would call her, well, before she was a good ball player who played shortstop. Now I would call her a shortstop. She has range from third base all the way through the center of the field. Her arms really improved. She has better body control, stopping the ball. I mean, so she's just all around just a really, really fun player to watch. And it's really self-made. She receives coaching, she takes it, and then she works on her own. I mean, she's a real dream to coach.
Kayla Kowalik, 420, 7 homers, 20 RBI. I think some people take her for granted what she does. I
Mhm.
hope not too many do. But just speak to her because I feel like she puts up numbers like ho hum, it's Kayla Kowalik, right? You just
Yeah.
think, right? That's how I feel.
Yes.
But she's more than that, and I hope people. I definitely don't think the fan base takes her granted, but I do feel sometimes people take her for granted for what she brings to the table.
Yeah, 2 years ago, well, pre-COVID, I guess it was, I believe it was you're always my first broadcast or whatever. And so, um, I think I said she has an opportunity to be one of the best players in the country, and I don't say that very often. And people are like, "Yeah, yeah, whatever," because I didn't know who she was. And sure enough, she was one of the best players in the country. And the great thing about Kayla is she's had 3 years of consistency being an elite level player. And when she's up in the box, you always have a shot. I mean, there's a 50% chance something great is going to happen. And even, when there's an out or, she doesn't get on base or whatever the case is, she made it tough. She doesn't give in very often. She's really, really a tough out. And you have to go out her. She's just going to take her base. So, Kayla is outstanding. I mean, we've been really lucky to have her in the leadoff spot. I can't imagine there's a better leadoff in the country than she is.
You mentioned protecting her and Aaron. Who are some of the players you're leaning on to help accomplish that of protecting them? I know you lost some hitters, but returned some good returners, and you obviously have some new faces.
Well, that's the 100-point question. Right now, I'm trying to figure out who I'm going to bat second. We have a lot of great options. Riley Smith is somebody who also has been on our team for a while and really goes underrated. She is an exciting player. And when she's playing well, she is impressive. You have Taylor Ebbs who has grown. She's a little bit older now and great situational hitter, really good mindset, really wants to protect her team. So she's somebody who you really want to have as, kind of your protector, your enforcer behind one of those two. We have a freshman by the name of Carissa Hamilton who is really strong, and she's a great player. She's exciting, really, really outstanding for a freshman. I mean, she still has to go through the figuring things out like all new people do, but really, really a good player. Miko Harrison is somebody that people don't see a lot on her team, but at the end of last year, I thought she did great, and she's gotten better and better every year, and she's really taken more of a leadership role on the team. So I could see her being in that mix. We have a transfer. We don't have many transfers often, but we have, a transfer who's really done a great job in the name of Grace Lawson, and also good teammate, really strong, really good in a situational role. So she would be a great protector. And then we have a ton of team speed. So you could always plop them into the 2 hole or even the 9 hole so that Koalik has a chance to, drive in some RBIs. So we have a lot of quick people too. So I think we have a very versatile offense. So I think depending who we're facing, we could come at you from a couple of different directions.
How you feel about your defense? Because that's something you always bring up too about helping your pitchers.
Well, I think you have to have a good defense in the SEC. I mean, people are going to get their home runs, and not just the SEC. I mean, we're starting our schedule off with a bang. People are going to get their home runs, but the key is you can't have multiple people on base, and so to me, it's essential that you have a shutdown defense. We are going to have a fast outfield. Right now, there's a dogfight in center field. Vanessa Nesby seems to be doing a great job as a front runner. So it has Jenna Blanton is a front runner. She's somebody who redshirted last year, both outstanding. We have a freshman in Chelsea Mack who's really quick and gets better and better every day. So you've got those three who could really, I feel comfortable putting any of them. When Koalik is not catching, she is an incredible center fielder. So I could see she'll probably get a little more time out there than people are used to. And then in right and left field, we have Hallie Mitchell is a great catcher. Carissa Hamilton's a great catcher, also athletic. So we got to find a spot for those guys. And then in right, you have Ebbs and Riley Smith. So the reason I'm talking so much about our outfield, because that's where the question marks are. That's where our graduation happened in a lot of people. Koffel's a mainstay in shortstop, so that's not going to be a surprise. We will have a new second baseman, probably. It's either going to be Margaret Tobias or Lauren Borzilleri. So I always stutter when I say her name. So you got a great second out there, but there are a couple people nipping at their heels, and then at first base, it's looking like right now Miko Harrison has the starting role, and then at third, you're looking at Lawson. But I'll tell you, we always play team 1 versus team 2 in our scrimmages, and we do it Ted Lasso style. We do a relegation promotion system. So the top 20%, which is about 2 batters of the lineup, go from team 2 to team 1, and the bottom go from team 1 to team 2. And we do that every practice. So I could see some other faces out there for sure.
You mentioned the pitching staff that you like the problem, the fact you don't know who's your number 1 is because you got depth. You got so many options. Is that something you go into the season? Do you have do you want to have an idea of how you want to use certain pitchers? Do you just let it evolve as you play the first couple of weeks of the season? What's your philosophy when it comes to that?
Well, I think you have to do both. I think you have to know your pitchers and what their pitchers are, so that you can create great matchups depending on the teams you're going to face. Right now, the person who gives you the most versatility is Schoonover for sure. She can throw in all 4 quadrants, and she can make the ball bend and run and all that, multiple different, and has command. That makes her special. Of all the pitchers that I have coached, she is most similar to Nunley in terms of her stuff. Now, she's not as big as Nunley and all that, but she throws harder, and she's competitive and just a great teammate. So she gives you the most versatility. You could kind of match her up against anybody. But I'll tell you who has really impressed me this fall is Kennedy Sullivan. She's gotten better and better. She's somebody that we projected out to be an everyday starter last year. I had to kind of, like everybody else, learn the SEC and in the grind of it, and she has figured that piece out. She's a great hitter and a great pitcher. So she's somebody who I think is really a player to watch. So those two are kind of right now, probably the headliners. And I'll tell you, Izzy Harrison has electric stuff. She was thrown between 68 and 72 in her fall scrimmages, and that ball spins and that ball moves. So her command gets better and better every day. And as she's gaining command, she's quickly moving up that ladder to be one of the most impressive pitchers in the country, actually.
As a coach, how do you remind yourself to stay patient with a player that you know has potential and upside, but is kind of learning the game on the fly, maybe is adjusting to the SEC, which can humble any player? I mean, the sport humbles you in general. So how do you stay patient? On the one end, you're trying to win games and things like that, but there's a player that maybe it takes them a little while to figure things out, whether it be pitching or hitting, etc. And maybe they could, become a better player by the end of the year, or maybe it takes them a year.
It's funny. When you ask me, I'm a much different coach now than I was before. I'll tell you, I truly believe this of all people. So I say that everybody's best quality is their worst quality. So you hit the nail on the head. My best quality is my sense of urgency to get things right. My worst quality is my sense of urgency to get things right. So fortunately, I have a great staff. And one of the things that I think that we're doing a much better job with now than I did early in our careers, we're doing a much better job addressing like the mindset and the habits and the routines and the things that you need to do to calm yourself down and visualize and stuff like that. I'm like, when I was younger, I was like, will you just pitch the ball and trust yourself and, get over it? You're fine, get out there, and don't get me wrong, I still have that in me, but and I certainly say those things depending on the person, but I think we do a much better job with the people who aren't quite ready for that, and helping develop their game. And I think that Izzy's been one of the people benefiting from that. And she's getting better faster than had we coached her 10 years ago. I don't think she would be to the place that she is now. In the fall, she was an elite, and you could put her in the end of games when she was closing and she was attacking batters and forcing them to swing and stuff like that. A year ago, she would have walked those people. So the fact that we feel comfortable with her closing games really says a lot about her maturity and her growth.
Your schedule is fascinating to me. You're going to start at the NFCA Classic in Clearwater, Florida. It's a marquee tournament. You're going to open the season with against St. John's. You play Louisville there on a neutral field. I don't know if that's going to be wild. I don't know if that's ever happened in that rivalry. Maybe, certainly in the postseasons you've played in certain places, but you got Texas in that tournament. You're going to Denton, Texas to play in a tournament. North Texas is a great team, highlighting that schedule. McNeese, a team that made a regional final last year's in that field. A couple of regional final teams there. You're going to Loyola Marymount in Los Angeles. They're a NCAA tournament team. You're going to Mary Nutter, which speaks for itself in that tournament, in that field that's in that deal. You're going to Oklahoma, to Norman, to play in their tournament there. That's all of the non-conference, basically. I think you only have one home game prior to conference starting in March. Just talk about your philosophy this year as far as the way you scheduled.
Well, pre-COVID, this is pretty much what we did all the time. And then, you got into a COVID situation, and we don't need to go near there, but one of the things that it really did was change people's scheduling. And it, you couldn't fly places, and you had to stay closer to home with the bus, and, it really affected budgets, and it was just a mess. And so now I feel like we have one more year of the, fifth year senior nonsense. But after that, so this is where I think scheduling has kind of gotten back to normal, and we're creating elite level matchups early in the season across conferences, which I think is special. And then I think that, next year when you start seeing not as many of the super seniors, you'll certainly have people who've redshirted and stuff. And I think that'll be more and more, but you won't see these massive, you don't want to see the Yankees coming out against you and stuff. And so I think, these next 2 years are crucial in getting softball back to like normal life. And then because we're such a high level sport, you're going to see more level playing field across the country, and it's going to continue to elevate with different teams being elite. And for us specifically, we love being on the national stage. I mean, so the downside of you play really, really good teams and you could potentially take a loss, but when you have a 56 game schedule, that's okay. The key is we have to make sure that we can, as a coaching staff, continue to improve, keep their confidence up, all that sort of stuff in the event that we don't win some of those games. But on the flip side, if you win those games, you're looking at a top 8 national seed. And I've been to super regionals enough to know that if I can just win some of those games and we show well in the SEC, we're going to be a host, a top 8 seed. Because, the majority of the time, the people that get out of super regionals are the ones that are the home team.
Yeah, no, that's
I
true.
mean,
I mean
yeah.
that's a pretty, for the most part, that's pretty accurate there. You're gonna host Michigan in one of your tournaments.
Mhm.
How strange is it gonna be when you play Michigan and you look across the dugout and Hutch is not there?
Well, it's weird and it's a little bit, nostalgic because over the past few years, you're starting to see more coaches who are older retire. You're also seeing a lot of young coaches go out, but I think that's another podcast too. So you're really seeing a shift in the coaching world. And so for me, people like Hutch and Ralph and, Kendra and all them, those were my idols when I first started getting into coaching because there's a little bit of an age difference. And those were just people I looked up to every day. So the fact that now I'm edging into the older edge of the spectrum and they're retiring and I'm starting to see, some really young coaches take off their careers and stuff like that really, really is special because as much as I, love my team and I love coaching, I love coaches and I love the profession of coaching. So there's some nostalgia, but I'll tell you, Michigan has a great staff. There's a lot of continuity in there also. So don't get me wrong, they're going to be ready to beat our head in. So the nostalgia is going to last about 1 second and then it's game on.
Plus, you never know. Hutch might be in the stands there
Oh, yeah,
watching the
there's
game,
no way.
right?
Yeah, there's no way she's, definitely not the first couple of years. She is not staying away.
I
No.
find that, yeah, I agree. I find that hard to believe. You mentioned coaching staffs and coaches. This upcoming offseason is going to be pretty significant with the volunteer coach becoming a full-time position in many sports, including softball and baseball. So you'll have four full-time assistants. What's your reaction to that? I know this has been talked about for a while,
Yeah.
and so not a surprise. And I think a lot of people seem to be excited. What's your thoughts now that looks like it's a reality?
Oh, thank God. Like it's been a long time coming and it's a great position for a lot of reasons. I mean, volunteering is great, and that was everybody's entry level into it. But I mean, those people were starving. They didn't have insurance. They were doing lessons all the time. They were fatigued, and there is something to be said about cutting your teeth that way because I think you are more appreciative of it when you land a regular job. But it's just awesome, and when you look at how many different skills the sport of softball has, how many different places on the field you have to be, whether it's the infield, the cages, outfield, in the bullpen or whatever. Three full-time coaches was just not enough. I would argue we need to have probably 5 or 6 coaches, but I am thankful that the vote finally passed, enough people bought into it, and now, we can all move forward helping out the person that we already have on our staff.
Yeah, I mean, you compare that to other sports. I mean, 4 coaches, considering the roster you have, the
Mhm.
recruiting now that's national. It's not, it seems like four is more than reasonable. It should be more than four, but four is a good start compared to what other sports have way more assistant coaches and than in that deal. And it's great for the student athletes from that standpoint too, because now you have more people that could, help them out and watch them.
Oh yeah, they get more attention and with the whole student health and mental health and all that sort of stuff. Well, it's hard to spend a lot of time doing mental health if you're spending all I mean, every coach I know is cutting film and is, a lot of coaches are working on fields and you have so many other responsibilities that it's hard to shift your time into that. And so as more time is required, and you have more people that can focus in that arena, we can now spend some time potentially like becoming a better coach, reading, keeping up to date with, standard practices and other areas besides the X's and O's. I just think it's about time. I do think it's necessary to keep softball at an elite level as well.
Yeah. I mentioned you obviously playing Oklahoma, you're playing
Mhm.
Texas on the schedule. In a few years, you're going to be playing them in conference
Yeah.
as conference mates. We don't know when that's going to, that looks like a couple years down the road, but have you thought about that impact that they're going to have when they join the league, or is that something you kind of put on the back burner? I mean, because obviously you're playing them this year, so that'll be that's been a topic. What's your thoughts there as far as the SEC down the road?
Well, future, who knows? But in my mind, all sports are shifting to it's going to be like the NFL, right? You're going to have the Big Ten is going to have a ton of teams. The SEC is going to have a ton of teams, and you're going to see these. They're not just great conferences; they're going to be mega in terms of size. But it's interesting because obviously they're elite level top tier teams with unbelievable fan bases and finances and stuff. So I think they're going to help in softball keep the SEC and propel it even higher, but keep it at a high level. But at the end of the day, you can only play so many conference games. So it's not like you're playing a current SEC schedule plus Texas and Oklahoma. They get in the mix. So you're playing as many good teams. You're just playing as many good teams as you do now. So, but I definitely think all of the peripheral stuff that Oklahoma and Texas bring is great for the league.
One of the things Cats go with this past fall is volleyball and women's soccer experimenting with seeding 32 teams. They've seeded 32 teams in part to create more balance in the brackets, try not to have the typical predictable regionals, certain two seeds going to certain places. You've been affected by that in so many different ways. Either when you host, you kind of know who's coming because everybody can bust in Kentucky. And then when you haven't hosted, you kind of like this last year, you basically busted Blacksburg. So I'm curious from your standpoint, what do you feel? Do you feel softball should look into seeding more teams like volleyball, women's soccer is experimenting? Do you like it how it is? What's your thoughts on the them going to 32 seeds, maybe possibly down the road?
I think it's a double-edged sword. And the reason is on the one hand, I do like regional softball because I think already we've done a pretty poor job of keeping the northern part of the country engaged. They're not some of the better softball teams, but as somebody who played in the north, not only do I want as many softball players as I can possibly have in the entire nation, but also that is a lot of TV sets we are leaving behind. You're leaving behind the, Bostons and the New Yorks and I guess Maryland, you have DC a little bit, but you're losing a lot of TVs up there. So right now, those places just are not ready in the sport of softball to kick off and be one of the top 32. Most of them are not. So I think regional would help with that a little bit. So that's one side of it. Now, some people are like, I don't care about them, and TV doesn't matter to that point. And I certainly understand that argument. So then you get into the 32. So you have they're saying you'd have a more competitive balance from 1 to 32, but I don't know how to say this politely, but after you get past number like 12, like who cares? I mean, they're all the same. I mean, like you have no idea if you're going to tell me they know the difference between the 18th team in the country and the 28th team in the country, I'm going to call no way. I mean, it is such a crapshoot right now that I think it would do that. If you think of it from that way, I don't know that you're getting a lot of positives except for a lot of extra expense that's going to get it. So the 32, so I don't know. I mean, I just don't know. I would have to see it in action, but as it is now, I think about the fight when we get down to who's a bubble team. Like think about your 17 through your 24. I mean, you could argue for all of them.
Well, I think last year's tournament kind of showed that, right? Mississippi State goes into Tallahassee, who's the number 2 national seed, wins on regional Sunday, gets to a super. Arizona goes to Missouri, wins a regional. Oregon State, they win a regional. Oregon State, Arizona get to the World Series. I mean, it was one of the wildest tournaments ever, and I think it proves to what you're talking about of the parity in the sport now, where there isn't that much of a big difference. From the team like you said, 12 to 32, for example, they're all pretty. It's a lot harder now to win a regional, let alone a super regional.
Yeah, there's a lot more better teams. There's more great kids playing around the country. And I think the more you get away from that, you're really being exclusive and you're losing out on a lot of younger players. And this is going to, I don't know how to say this politely, but I don't know. I think softball is great, and I think we can always get better. I'm all about continuing to tweak things to improve on all levels, but I don't know that we should necessarily be following volleyball and soccer because our ratings and stuff are a lot higher. So I'm going to have to see that in action before not that it matters what Rachel Lawson thinks, but before I would give my, stamp of approval. I just don't know why we would follow that direction until we see that it's really helped.
Well, I care what you think. It's
Well, I
a lot of
appreciate
people
that.
care
Thank
there.
you. Yeah.
Uh, well, let me ask, and you bring up because you were a great player up in the north, as you mentioned at
Mhm.
UMass, but you coach obviously in the south, so in Kentucky. Do you think the sport should maybe start the season a little later and help schools like in the north and Midwest? I know some in the south don't like that. They get to host a ton of time, to start the year. But do you think maybe that would help as well, starting the season a little later?
Yes, I think there's no question that starting the season would help, for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you are a northern school, you will spend your first 20, 25 games on the road. That is very, very expensive. And what you're going to start seeing in the next couple of years is I think you're going to continue to see softball teams get cut from colleges. And I do not want that at all. So I think by starting later, you have the opportunity to play more home games in some of the the colder weather climates, and I think that's better for the sport of softball. And the warmer weather people, I mean, they're still going to be able to host. They're not getting hurt right now. They're just losing a little bit of their advantage. And I'm all about them as well because they're the ones, the fan bases and stuff like that really are centered down there. But I don't think anybody benefits from having fewer softball teams and fewer softball players.
Has there been talk about this? I know in college baseball and talking to people over there, there's been talk about them moving it back, pushing it back a little bit, and even maybe pushing that World Series over there to July, that first weekend of July, and which brings obviously
Yeah.
the concerns are obviously the semesters. You kind of go into from one semester to another, but basketball seems to have figured it out, so I don't see why other sports can't figure some things like that out. Has there been talk about that or at all? Do you think maybe down the road is that a talking point?
Oh, we've been talking about that stuff for 25 years at our convention. So, for whatever reason, we can't seem to get it together. And then, so we don't even have consensus among the coaches. And honestly, once the coaches get consensus, then we would have to really lobby the NCAA because you're right. On the flip side, there's a lot of schools right now who don't spend money when school gets out of session because, there's a cost associated with that as well. So they don't want that. And plus you have TV you have to figure out, right now. But when we made super regionals the way we did, and we backed up the World Series from Memorial Day, a lot of people thought that that was going to be silly, that we really cornered the market on Memorial Day, and I don't think that that's hurt us at all. I think we continue to see really, really good TV viewing. So I think there's a lot of moving pieces, but it's certainly something that, in my opinion, would be better for the sport.
You mentioned obviously conventions. I'm curious, as coaches, what was the big topic when you all got together this off season at some point? What was the big topic in the sport that y'all talk about, whether it be a rule or anything in the game?
Oh,
What's the big topic in this? Because you're involved, you're heavily involved. For people that don't know, you're always involved in trying to help the game. You've been involved with the rules and things like that. What's the big topic in the game right now among coaches?
well, a lot of us were sitting back, in fairness, a lot of us are sitting back because you have this restructuring stuff going on. I forget what it's called in the NCAA level. So, with the extra coach, that has been a huge push. So the fact we were waiting to see what happened with that. And, we certainly have a great NFCA. The leadership is great and they're always working hard for us. And the fact that they were instrumental in helping push that, I thought was great. So that was key. And now that we've gotten over that hurdle, now we always talk about recruiting calendars, and that seems to always be a major topic of conversation. So that really took up a lot of our time at the convention. And then, this is not a rules change year. So, certainly the double base is coming very soon. You're always talking about tweaking, further tweaking pitching rules. But I'll tell you, in our sport, we had by just changing the feet a couple of years ago and in the slapper rule and all that, there were instrumental changes in the sport. Those were pretty significant. And so now we're just working through those and tweaking small things at the moment.
Couple last things. We had Holly April on here recently, and I really complimented both of you because I thought you two have done a great job pushing the softball in the state of Kentucky. That Louisville, Kentucky mentioned you had a great. You played in the fall, which was nationally. It was televised for your fall event, which has become a big event. In that Halloween event that you do there to help there. Just talk about that, and you're both going to play in Clearwater. Then you'll play again during the season. But I feel like you two have done a great job of pushing that matchup, kind of like basketball, obviously, as we've talked about in the past. It's huge in the state, Louisville, Kentucky. Football has become a big deal there as well with the successes of those schools. And I feel like you two have done a great job pushing the softball now, where people circle that matchup in the state. Just talk about that growing the game in the state?
Well, the Halloween game is important, and I'll be honest with you. A lot of the credit goes to my school because it's my administration's desire. They're spending money putting it on TV. The marketing of the game is unbelievable. The amount of money we spend on it to bring people into the gate and everything is just awesome. And the reason we do that is because there's limited opportunities to highlight the sport of softball in the fall because everybody's spending their resources on, all the fall sports. So the fact that the University of Kentucky is willing to do that, I think is pretty special, and they know the significance of softball. So if you can just keep pinging people nationally in the sport, we think that's special. But in terms of Louisville specifically, a lot of times when you have a rivalry, right, that the opposing team doesn't want to play you because they don't want to show their stuff early in the year. And the fact that Louisville has such courage to do that, I think speaks a lot to, to Holly and their coaching staff and their style and their school administration. But the importance of Kentucky, the state, is number one, we're kind of a bridge state. So geographically, we're in the middle. And so I think that's helpful. So there's a lot of eyes on us. And the fan bases for such a state with a small population, the number of people that are part of Louisville's fan base, and certainly the Big Blue Nation, there are just absolutely thousands of us. So the fact that and we live all over the country, so the fact that we can keep that moving, I think, is important for softball because of our geography and the fact that we have schools and fans that are willing to get involved all the time.
Yeah, no, it's been tremendous, and she's giving you a lot of credit. For those that don't know, you two were both know each other from UMass teammates. You've known each other for a long time, and she's joked, like as you said, just because it's fall ball doesn't mean it's less competitive between the two of you.
Oh no, like they're mean. I mean, like you're just like, oh my god, like you have a cool T-shirt on, and we got some Halloween music, But like they're like going across their dugout, going to theirs, and they've got the games on. Looking, I'm like, oh dang, we better get on it. No, it's a fierce battle. But it's a lot of fun and certainly a way to highlight the sport of softball.
Last question, to let you go, is obviously as you get going, before you know it, your season will start. What are a couple of keys for this team to accomplish your internal goals? If you do blank, we will be able to accomplish our goals.
This team has to be as tough as our 2014 team. And what I mean by that is you highlighted it earlier. So our schedule is tough, and we haven't put out this great schedule in a long time. So a lot of the people on our team just know that the schedule where the teams that we were playing RPI wise were not as strong early. We weren't opening up against Washington and UCLA. We haven't done that in a long time. Not when I say opening up, in the first few weekends. And with that comes, losing. And kids in today's day and age, a lot of, how do you balance? Listen, you're gonna, you're putting your neck out there, and sure, if you win, everything's going great. But if you don't win this game, how are you going to be tough enough to pick yourself up for the next one? And for us to be able to accomplish our goals, we're going to have to be a lot tougher than our teams have been in the past. It is easy to have fake toughness when you're not playing teams that are, going to be preseason ranked harder than you. To be able to pick yourself up, stay confident, keep your team up, and keep a great mentality and great energy is not an easy thing to do. People talk about it like, oh, I just said it, you should be able to do that. That is not easy. It's that confidence piece, to be tough enough to maintain your confidence even in that environment, really is special. And I think for us to be where we need to be, that's what we have to do.
It's Rachel Lawson, Kentucky head coach. By the way, check out the website, ukathletics.com. It's a brand new look. I mean, I looked at your roster page, the coaching staff page. It's like 21st. It's unbelievable. Like, I mean, heck, even our good buddy Chris Scholes has a bio in there now. You guys are unbelievable with that
stuff. But look at his picture. It's from like his freshman year in college. Can you get on him about that? Like, we got this great
Isn't
website.
That ironic? The SID will not get a new photo. Like, he forces all of you to get photos.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I looked a lot better 10 years ago, like I would have preferred that picture. Like he does an exceptional job. He needs to put a current web picture out there. So you get on him about that.
Well, we just did on the show. We called him out on the Passional podcast. He's going to listen to this, and he's right there. Now he knows. Nationally, all eyes will be on him there. Coach, always a pleasure to talk to you. Always thank you for coming on our show. I know it's always busy with your schedule, but you always take the time to talk to us. Good luck this season, and we'll cross paths and during the season and talk soon. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate everything you do. You're awesome.